Hi, in this video we will learn how to define variable in C++. To define a variable, let's take an example. I want to define a variable of type integer and the name of the variable is x and I want to give this variable a value of 5. So what's int here? Ints we call int as a data type. So the type of the variable will be integer. Integer mean it will take numbers, integer numbers, whether positive or negative or 0. And x is the name of the variable. So I have to choose a name of the variable. And then 5 is the value of the variable. So the variable has a name, has a data type, and has a value. And this value is stored in the memory. I can declare the variable like this, or I can declare it in two lines. The first line I declare the variable, in the second line I give it a value. So now I define x and then I give the x value of 5. Because it's a variable, I can also change the variable later if I want. So now if I want to print the value of x, simply I use cout x. So cout x will print the value, will not print x, it will print the value of x, which should be 7, because 7 is the latest value of this variable. If I wrote x in the quotation, then it's different. I want to print the letter x and not the value of the variable. But usually, if you want to print a value, you just write x without double quotation. So, what are the rules to name a variable? We have a rules to name a variable. So you can use characters, numbers, or underscore. Like I can write like something like first number 5. So this is a valid name of the variable. So the rules is that you are allowed to use characters, you are allowed to use underscore, you are allowed to use numbers, but you should not start with number. If you start with a number, then this will not work. You get an error. Also, something to notice about the variable, don't use a variable before declaring it. For example, here x, we are writing x equal to 7, but we didn't declare x. So you have to declare first x so that you can give it a value and print it. So this is about the integer data type. Do we have other data types? Yes. We have other data types like, for example, double. Let me call it y. So what's the difference between integer and double? In double you can store fractional number or decimal numbers. So you can use integer for integer number and double for floating points number. We also have another data types. It's called bool for boolean. So in this data types it has only two values, true or false. So I can store true or false in this variable. I also have a data types called character where I can store character in this. For example, I want to store the character G and I write G with single quotation. So now these are 4 data types. These are the most famous data types in C++. And for sure I can print all these variable. I make end line and then I print variable y. I make end line, I print variable z. I make end line and then I print variable a. So let me run this code. You will see it will print the values of all the variables. 7, which was stored in X, 6.5 true. True is dealt by 1. When I print the boolean Z, when I store true, true is 1 and false is 0. So they are matched to each other because the computer is dealing with 0 and 1. 0 is like false, 1 is like true. There are other data types in C++. For example, if you want to store a small integer, you use something called short. Short b equal to 7. So if you print b, it will print 7 as well. So what's the difference between short and integer? In short, you just store small numbers. So if you try to store 1 million in the short, it will not work. Let us try to store 1 million in short. It will not give the correct value. So I store 1 million in the short b, but it gives me some random value because short is not enough to store this large number. However, if you want to store a small number, then you can do it in a short, but in general we just use integer. We also have another data types called long. In this you can store very huge numbers because integer, there is a limit for integer to store like 4 billion, but for long you can store more numbers than 4 billion. So I can store very large number in the long. So if I print w, it should work. So it's print w, but if I try to store this number in integer, it will not work because integer can store numbers up to 4 billion something, actually 2 to the power of 31. There is also data types called unsigned integer. Unsigned integer. So this is data types. Let me call it C. In this unsigned, you are only can give a value of positive numbers without negative. So if you try to give negative, it will not work. So if you try to print C and you are giving -1, I should print C, not CW. So you see, you don't get the right number. I make -5, but it understands it differently. Because this is unsigned integer, it only stores integer, non-negative integer. And the same for long, the same for short. We have unsigned long, unsigned short. We also have another data types that can store floating points values. It's called float. Float d equal to 7.9. So I can print d. It's similar to double, but double can store more precise number. And the most famous data type for floating point is the double. The most famous one for integer is int. So usually most of the time we use int, double, and boolean for true false or 0 1, and character if you want to store one character. Make sure for character you use single quotation and not double quotation. So to summarize today, In this video, we learn how to define variables and how to print them. We learn different data types for the variables. Thank you for listening.